It's a replay of the Wimbledon 2022 final. You guessed it. It's Ons Jabeur versus Elena Rybakina, and I cannot wait to get into this one because is it going to be revenge for Ons Jabeur? Will it be repeat for Elena Rybakina? And will she extend, or actually take a lead in the head-to-head and go 3-2 up between the two players, or will Ons Jabeur manage to be the one to step in front? I cannot believe that we're going to get a replay of this in the quarterfinals as well, nonetheless. And it's such an incredible clash of styles. It just sets up a beautiful match to watch. Before we get into it, though, remember to hit that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Thank you as well to our members. Shout out to you guys. You guys, of course, are legends. Okay, let's get into this then. So, last year in the Wimbledon 2022 final, Ons Jabeur was the favourite going into it. This year, though, I tell you now, Rybakina is the favourite. That doesn't mean my prediction is Rybakina to win. It might be, but don't be impatient. I'm going to give you guys my prediction at the end of this video. Before we get there, though, we're going to go through, as usual, their route to this stage. So who they played so far at Wimbledon and how they've looked and what the scorelines have been, on top of also looking at the head-to-head. And then finally, well, penultimately even, I will then talk about strategically and tactically how it might play out, and I'll reference that final as well a little bit, because I do think we're going to see some parallels between this match and that final, but there's some things that both players could do to improve to make sure that they get the W, in my opinion. And then ultimately, I'll give you guys my prediction. So let's get through the routes for both players. And if you can see here, Ons Jabeur has looked very good. And it's great to see her back in form, of course, as well. She hasn't had the best of years, didn't play the Australian Open due to injury. And then Roland Garros, she made the quarterfinals, so she looked quite good, in all honesty, up until that stage. She lost to Haddad Meyer, who played some really good tennis, to be fair. But, you know, she would have been disappointed not to go further, but it still a good result. Last year, she lost in the first round there. This part of the year, though, is where she really turned it on, of course. She made the final of Wimbledon last year and then the final of the US Open. Could she replicate that? We'll see, or even go one step further. So she beat Freck in the first round and then Bay in the second round, both in straight sets. Then the toughest match anyway for her so far was Andreescu. She won that one in 3 sets and actually was a breakdown in the third set. She managed to recover and win it 7-5 that set. Really, really entertaining match. And then Kvitova, she blew her away 6-love, 6-4. And I tell you what, well, 6-love, 6-3, sorry, even. And I was very surprised about Kvitova's level. I don't think it's as high as maybe it could have been. She's a 2-time champion at Wimbledon. But I do also think that Ons Jabeur played an incredible match. The only thing that was a little bit of a letdown was her first serve percentage in. Now, it didn't affect the result, but we'll talk about why that might be important against Rybakina and why that number probably needs to get up, because it was at 38% against Kvitova, 51% against Andreescu, and it's been very low at this championships, and I don't think her second serve is going to be enough to ward off Rybakina. And we'll talk about why a bit later. But look, a very impressive run so far, and she's got confidence. Her level's high. It's going to be really interesting to see what she can bring to the table. Right, Rybakina. Well, she had a tough first round against Shelby Rogers, and everyone was saying that her route to not just the quarterfinals but the finals was going to be really, really tough. But, and kudos to a lot of my subscribers, they said, look, she's going to get through it because it's almost getting progressively harder and harder each round, and she's going to play herself in because she hasn't had the best of preparation. She's lost a couple of matches in the grass court tournament. She hasn't been fully fit as well, had some injury concerns. But look, that win against Rogers was a really impressive one, just the way that she managed to maneuver herself to victory. Then Cornet was a good one as well, straight set victory. Didn't play the best tennis, but champions, they find a way to win. Bolter, she destroyed her 6-1, 6-1. And then the match against Haddad Meyer, shame that she didn't get to test herself out against the left-handed Brazilian, because it was 4-1 and Haddad Meyer had to retire due to injury. So massive shame there. But look, it means that she's nice and fresh now for this Jabeur match. So that's a positive. In terms of the head-to-head, well, let's talk about that now. So you can see here they played each other 4 times. Rybakina has beaten Jabeur at Wuhan and also in America as well. And then Jabeur beat her in debate and also in Wimbledon. Sorry, Jabeur beat Rybakina in debate and in America in 2021. And then Rybakina beat her in Wuhan and also, of course, the Wimbledon final last year, which is the most important victory when referencing this match because this is going to be on grass at Wimbledon, exactly the same tournament. This is also the last time they both played. So we are going to talk about that when referencing technically and tactically how this one might play out. So then let's get into that because I think it's going to be really interesting. So a few opening points before I get into the nitty gritty about how that last year's final played out. Now, in bite-sized chunks, Jabeur started off strong. She broke Rybakina early, and look, her variation, her slicing and dicing, and especially the drop shot was very, very effective. Rybakina, though, she almost, let's say she adapted. She managed to get to a stage where she wasn't being completely dominated by Jabeur in terms of being pulled out of her court positioning and pulled into awkward areas of the court. And when she was pulled into perceived awkward areas of the court, especially with the drop shot, she actually was reading it really well. And she was either hitting a reverse drop shot or chasing it down with plenty of time to spare and actually winning a high percentage of those points from the second set onwards. Now, that was interesting, of course, to see. I think Ons Jabeur also, her head dropped a little bit, I think, after losing the second set. And Rybakina stayed very cool mentally. So that's something to look out for as well as the mental side of things. Now, Jabeur, I think, is in a better place mentally going into this match. So that should be a positive. I don't think she was in a bad place necessarily in the final, but I do think there's a lot of expectation. She was the favorite. Maybe being the underdog might be a positive for her in this match, on top of the fact that she'd won the first set. So she was halfway there to the title. And then I think Rybakina winning that second set, of course, just piled on the pressure to Ons Jabeur, no doubt. And she maybe overplayed her hand at times. I think she overused certain shots and her shot selection wasn't quite as good as it should have been, in my opinion. For Rybakina, though, she served very well, started returning well, chasing down balls, and yeah, just adapted really well to Jabeur's game. So how does that play out? Now, normally I talk about serve return dynamics and forehand to forehand and backhand to backhand. We might touch upon that, but I want to talk about more specific things. One of the things is the drop shot, Ons Jabeur's drop shot. So, what does last year's final mean for this matchup? Now, I'm not saying that Ons Jabeur should not play the drop shot. She definitely should. It's a really useful tool that is very good, not just against players who aren't named Elena Rybakina, because Rybakina, yes, she's very good at chasing down drop shots, or was very good at chasing down drop shots in that final from the second set onwards. But her movement is, yeah, I think very solid, but it's not exceptional. So if Ons Jabeur is able to utilize the drop shot and select the correct moments, at least for the most part, against Rybakina to utilize it and not be predictable with it, then she will gain success. Now, I don't see her drop shotting the second serve of Rybakina's very often because, unlike with someone like Kvitova, the second serve of Rybakina's are not particularly weak, especially pace-wise. It's quite difficult, especially the big kicker that she manages to hit. You really need to get over and hit a drive backhand, or if she's going to slice, that's not necessarily a bad option as well. For Jabeur on grass, it's going to keep low. She's got a good slice, but it just needs to be deep, needs to be with pace, and it needs to be effective enough to at least try and get Rybakina on the back foot, especially with the second serve return. I think Ons Jabeur, her key for me when it comes to the serve return dynamic is there's two things. Number one, it's going to be making sure that those second serve returns are really, really good in the sense that she's making a high percentage of returns made back into play on the second serve, and she's giving herself an opportunity to be on the front foot in a lot of them so she can try and win and push Rybakina as much as possible, because that's how she's going to build pressure against Rybakina's serve. Now, with the first serve, what she's going to have to do there is just try and make the ball as much as possible, because in honesty, her first serve is arguably the best on tour. She's hit the most aces on tour as well, Rybakina. Ons Jabeur needs to get a racket on now. She did quite well, I thought, very well actually in that final at the start against Rybakina's serve. She read it nicely. She anticipated well, and also not just anticipation, but I think the return quality was really high. And Ons Jabeur is quite a natural returner. She doesn't necessarily need a big backswing. And what she was doing well was going deep down the middle. I talk about that in my Alcaraz Runa preview, so go check that out if you want as well. But that's something that Alcaraz has adopted. And I think it doesn't even need to be incredibly well struck returns, but decent enough returns that are at her feet, good depth, decent enough pace. She's going to find it difficult to get down really low with her big 6'1" frame and dig it out and have anything aggressive come back to Jabeur with as well. Like almost impossible. So she needs to be on it, I think, Jabeur, when it comes to second serve return. First serve, she needs to try and just make as many returns as possible. And defensively needs to be good against Rybakina. Make her play as many balls on that first serve. Make it awkward. Don't give her many free points. It's going to be difficult on the first serve because there's only so much that's in your control with Rybakina's first serve. But yeah, when the chances come, she needs to be clinical, Jabeur. That's my opinion on that. On her serve, she needs to make a high percentage of first serves in. And I'll tell you why, because I referenced the 38% and 51% first serves made in. And look, first serves made in is not the be all and end all, but you can make 95% of, you can have 95% of first serve points won and have only 38% of first serves made. And that's just not good enough. Unless you're winning, the similar amount behind your second serve, it's not great. And the issue against Rybakina is she's not going to let up on the second serve. She is going to attack the Jabeur second serve. I've seen her in the last year, and her returning ability has improved. Not only has it improved, but against the second serve, she is actually savage at times. She really is. She just goes for it. She goes for it. And she'll hit return winners. She'll really put the opponent on the back foot, especially with someone like Jabeur, and Świątek's a good example as well. Even though she's got a good kick serve, Świątek, Jabeur tends to hit a slice serve. It's a bit different, but pace-wise, they're pretty similar in the sense that they can sometimes be very low in their MPH. So they can be around the 75, 80 mile per hour mark, which is slow for a second serve. And you know what? Especially if it's middle of the box, someone like Rybakina is going to make that into a real problem for Jabeur. And Jabeur on the back foot is nowhere near as good as Jabeur on the front foot dictating. Yes, we've seen some great defensive plays from her at Wimbledon. She's in good physical shape. She's chasing down balls well, but that's a position she does not want to be in. She needs to make a high percentage of first serves, and she needs to hit her spots. Because if she can get some free points on serve, it will definitely alleviate some of the pressure that she's going to feel on serve, especially if Rybakina is getting through service games quickly, and then Jabeur feels like she's having to serve all the time because Rybakina's games are just whizzing by like this. In terms of how the rest of it might play out, now I think Jabeur needs to utilize her toolbox, and that means utilizing the forehand slice, utilizing the forehand on the line, flattening out when she can, what she does. Backhand as well needs to find good angles and then utilize the drop shot at the right times. Coming to the net is not a bad ploy, but she needs to come in behind quality. So a slice approach shot or a forehand approach shot, for example, but deep into a corner, she cannot hit an average or above average approach shot and then expect to win the point. Rybakina will pass her, she'll lob her. It won't be pretty. So I think Jabeur needs to be on top of that. And the backhand slice is can be effective against Rybakina because it's very low. Rybakina can't hurt you as much with the backhand, especially if it's with pace and it's low. She's just not going to be able to dig it out and play anything super aggressive. And most likely it's going to be cross court, so it becomes predictable what's going to come back, and Jabeur can then adjust accordingly. And it's a good variation. The one thing Rybakina is one thing I've noticed anyway, is she is very, very, very good when it comes to playing against someone who's a bit one pace. Her rhythm is so important. If she's in rhythm, she's almost impossible to beat at times. If Jabeur can get it off a rhythm with good variation, different paces on the ground strokes, slicing, the drop shot's good as well, it's fine. a bit of variation on the forehand and backhand in terms of height of the net, pace, but the big thing that cannot change, unless it's a drop shot, is depth. She needs to hit the ball deep. If she does, Rybakina cannot push her back consistently with aggression, which she has on the forehand and backhand side of Rybakina. She hits big from the back of the court. She's a big server. She's a big hitter. And on this surface, which is a quick, low bouncing surface, it is completely suited to her game. But for Ons Jabeur, what suits her game is, of course, her slicing and dicing, the drop shot, and she has that ability. Even the forehand slice, I saw her utilize against Kvitova at times. It's not a bad ploy to use against Rybakina, as long as, again, it's quality. She can't hit a loopy forehand slice or a forehand slice that's, got pace on it, but it's short. It will get punished. So she needs to be careful there, Jabeur. Let's see how this one plays out, but I'm very much looking forward to it. I think there's so many different components to discuss and we could be here all day, but the biggest thing for me is going to be who can maximize their abilities on this surface against the opponent, who can be clinical in the big moments, and who is going to really step up to the plate and grab this match by the scruff of the neck. Can Jabeur be the one to do it and gain revenge, or will it be Rybakina to just repeat it? And she'll say, you know what, I've actually learned from that final, and not only am I going to beat you, but I'll beat you in straight sets potentially. Or will Jabeur say, look, I've learned from my mistakes, and I've actually sat down and realized what I did wrong, and she'll be the one that adapts more against Rybakina here, because this is a great clash of differing styles. And what that means is we're going to see a lot of different points, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm all for it. I really am. So, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Remember to hit that like button, do subscribe if you're new. Before we go anywhere, my prediction, you know what? Rybakina is a massive favourite. I tell you that. And I could be a little bit biased here because I do like Jabeur's game. I'm going to go Jabeur in 3 sets. In honesty, though, the safe money is on Rybakina. It is. It really is. I'm just being honest. But yeah, my prediction, I'm going to go a bit left field. I'm going to go Jabeur 3 sets. I'm going to go for her to exact revenge. Let's see. Guys, thank you so much. Remember to tune in to the live watch along as well, which we'll be doing tomorrow for this, and cannot wait to see you guys there.